is Daybreak on Trust Television, and thank you for staying with us. We are continuing the show with newspaper review, looking at the top headlines of today's papers. And we'll start with the Daily Trust newspaper. And the Daily Trust, the big story there, on the front page, it says, exclusive families paid 800 million naira to secure release of 7 Kaduna train captives. And it has right there, the first one says, ransom paid in dollars, naira. How Boko Haram partnered bandits for train attack. Captors behind Kuje jailbreak, they jubilated on return, says freed captive. It is a journey to Valley of Death, says released FCT UBEC director. And on the top of the page, so there are some other stories. The first one, 2023, where I chose Shetima as running mate, says Tinubu. High expectations as NNPC takes off as corporate body. Story on page 25. And just beside that, despite concerns, finally shuts Lagos Airport domestic runway. It's a story on page 23. And just below the main story of the paper, there's pictorial of some residents of Sokoto metropolis struggling to get water from a water tank provided by the State Water Board in Sokoto on Saturday. On Saturday. Then by the right of the picture, there are some more stories. PDP crisis, Atiku returns to lead Ocean governorship campaign. Story on page 13. Then another story on page 4. 2 pupils die after suffocating in school bus. Story on page 4. Then Buratai to sue Sahara reporters for linking him to recovered 1.8 billion naira. That's stories in today's front page of today's Daily Trust. And with us in the studio to discuss the stories of today is Dr. Theophilus Abba, director of Daily Trust Foundation and a member of the Daily Trust editorial board. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, and welcome, Stella.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you have gone, you have had some of these stories in, front page of Daily Trust today. I don't know whether to start with the politics or the economy and also, of course, security issue. But maybe to begin with on the lighter note, I think we should first seek for your own view regarding the Tinubu's announcement yesterday of Senator Kashim Shettima as his running mate. Of course, this debate over Muslim ticket had been, there for long. But was there something in your own talks? Was this something that you thought would not happen, or you felt that it will happen?
Okay, thank you very much. It was quite interesting, what Tinubu did. I was surprised that he chose a Muslim, as his running mate. Very surprised. And I was not shocked that it was Shettima that he picked. And maybe I should explain. Because since he got the APC ticket, there's been this call to ensure that he has a Muslim, a Christian as his vice president. Because every time a Muslim from the south, especially from the Yoruba-speaking south, got the ticket of any political party to run, he will face the dilemma of who he should pair with from the north. And the dilemma is, if you paired with a Christian, and the Christian community is considered as a minority in the north, you may not likely get the popular vote of the Muslim north. That is one. And then if you paired with a Christian, if you paired with a Muslim, the Christians will feel, alienated. The dilemma had been there in 1993. I think Abiola had the same dilemma. And he was a Muslim from the south. He got a ticket, and he wanted a candidate from the north. And logically, he should be a Christian. And from my readings, he was in a dilemma for, quite some weeks, before he announced his running mate. In fact, he had to meet the former president, IBB, to say, look, this is what I'm faced with. What do I do? And I was told IBB gave him some candidates, some possible vice presidents. But the bottom line was that IBB told him to pick a Christian from the north. But when he returned to his party members and his inner caucus, he was told that, look, a Christian will not help you to win the election, at the general election. So he went back and picked Kingibe, So it seems
that ticket of Abiola Kingibe actually was a surprising one because it defeated a Muslim-Christian ticket of Tofa and his running mate.
Yes.
So do you see 1993 happening again?
No, it will happen. 1993 will not happen. You see, the fact is that the Nigeria of 1993 is different from Nigeria of 2023. You understand? In 1993, you see, what people saw was Abiola. Abiola was a humanitarian, from north to south, east to west. He was seen as somebody who supported the people, regardless of religion, regardless of ethnic affiliation. You see him contributing to churches, contributing to mosques, and all this and all that. And I would say that even though Tinubu has a measure of generosity, I don't think he has caught the image of Abiola. He doesn't have that image that Abiola had in 1993. That is number one. Then since 2000, 2003, there is so much of religious sensitivity in Nigeria. And the people have become too conscious, of religion. Before then, people were conscious of religion, but not to the extent that it is now, especially with a lot of outcry, from many Christian communities of marginalization. And if you look at it graphically, you have the president who is a Muslim, the vice president a Muslim, the party chairman a Muslim, the Senate president a Muslim, the Speaker of the House of Reps a Muslim. You see, that image, shows alienation. And so, the sentiment that made Abiola to win in 1993 may not be there in 2023. And unfortunately, I don't know how it could be repaired, but there's so much complaint from the Christian community. I'm a Christian, and we pray in the churches, say, look, let there be peace in Nigeria. There's so much. So I am surprised that he chose a Muslim as his running mate. But I'm not surprised.
One thing he mentioned. Okay.
I'm not surprised that he chose Shetima.
Why?
Yes, I'm not, because Shetima has demonstrated that he has been very loyal to Tinubu. At the point when it was like Tinubu should not run, he came out openly, boldly to say, look, this man had helped, Buhari, in 2015, it was, his effort, his support that made it possible for Buhari to become president. And so if he had demonstrated interest, showed interest to be elected as president, the logical thing to do is to give him the ticket. You see, this is somebody who was courageous enough to challenge whatever we call the narrative against Tinubu. And consistently he said, look, this man, should be given the ticket. He went about campaigning from north to south. He didn't hide, his support for Tinubu. And I'm feeling that if I were in Tinubu's shoes and I have to choose a supporter, a running mate, that kind of character is good, But for me, if he had decided to choose a Christian, perhaps it would have been better. And I want to say that, you see, the Christians are seen as a kind of minority in the north, but there are so many very good Christians who are into politics, so many of them. and they are in APC, they are in all the political parties. And I was thinking that, he ought to have done it differently. But that is a personal opinion.
And thank you very much. But maybe one final question on this before we move on. With Tinubu now, the way the ticket is, on one side, Atiku Abubakar and Okowa of the PDP, Peter Obi and Yusuf Dati Ahmed and Konkoso, whose running mate we are still not sure of. How do you see the chances of the ruling party?
Well, the 2023 election will be very, very interesting, because, and I'm not happy about it, there's going to be a lot of campaign, a lot of voting in a lot of religious line. Religion is going to be seriously considered as a factor in the 2023 election. And it's going to be quite tough. I'm thinking that the party that win the election will not win with a very wide margin. That's what I foresee. From my own calculation, based on what we do in newspapers, Kwankwaso is having a stronghold of the northwest. At least one or two states in the northwest may fall under his aura, because he has an aura. Shetima is very popular in the northeast, especially in Borno and Yobe. Maybe an aspect of Gombe.
Okay.
Yes, and Atiku is very strong in Adamawa. No matter how you look at it, Atiku has a very strong hold in Adamawa. He is very strong in Taraba as well. So the north is going to be the battleground actually, because the reason why Tinubu had to pick a Muslim, as his running mate may actually be because he knows that the north will be a battleground and it's going to be a lot of struggle. So he needs a Muslim from the north. So I'm feeling that it's going to be a very tough election. Tinubu may have a strong outing in the southwest, maybe some part of the north, but it will be very tough for him in the east. It will be very tough for him in the south-south. It will be very tough for him in the north-central, because no matter how you look at it, north-central has a lot of voting population. The east and the south may not have so many voters, figures. But then a combination of what to come from the north-central, what to come from the south and southeast could actually be a factor in deciding who wins the election. So the ruling party will need to really work harder. Working harder in the sense that you must convince Christians in Nigeria that it's not bigotry that you are running with, because if in an era when people talk about all sorts of inclusivity, apart from gender, talk about ethnic inclusivity, social inclusivity, and all those things, for you to have a parallel structure where only one religion tends to dominate, I don't think it is healthy for gender equity in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. And let's look quickly at the lead story of Daily Trust. When you see the story, families paid 800 million for 7 Kaduna train captives. What is your first reaction?
Well, I was shocked, because the narrative that was in circulation before now was that there was a backhand deal between the government and ISWAP, to break into Kuje prison and release some of their members, ISWAP members or Boko Haram members in prison, so as to release some of the captives, that is the Kaduna trained attack captives. So when I read that story, I was first of all happy. Secondly, I was shocked. Happy because it makes some of us who believe that government will not engage in that kind of dangerous and not misleading, but disappointing agreement, with terrorists. Now, the fact that these people had to pay 800 million for these 7 captives to be released demonstrate that, what we are dealing with, the insecurity in the country, it's not really about ideology. It's mercantile. It's about money. You know, it's actually about money. That look, this is a crime, you know, that and that is meant, you know, to enrich some persons and to impoverish some persons. So I was happy that Daily Trust had that story, you know, to dispel, you know, the kind of impression that people now had that the government just changed, the people by allegedly, you know, exchanging the Boko Haram captives, detained Boko Haram members with detained train attack captives.
Yes. Okay, so now let's take a look at this day away from the lead trust. This day lead with the story that says, just like maybe what you said earlier, Tinubu rewards loyalty over competence, electoral value, religious balance. As a journalist myself, I feel is a bit opinionated, but I will ask you about that. Says spirit of 1993 is upon us in 2023. Briefs Buhari in Daura. Masari stands down. Governors angry over decision. Meet president in Homestead today. Senator pulls out of support. Campaign group APC member quits. Inside details of how party candidate fought for choice partner. Stakeholders turned down Oshimole as likely campaign DG. It is left for voters to decide. It is a perfect choice, says Keamo. Atiku cautions against politics of exclusion. These are all part of the lead story of this morning. Then on top of that, Rwanda 2023 may be Nigeria's costliest election ever in history. Estimate 6 trillion to be spent to win presidential election. Says money bags ready to pay whatever price to secure victory. And the very top of the page, the story there says, okay, IOC's killing local oil servicing companies in Nigeria, says Wabote. Want 40% cost reduction deal with NNPC oil majors renegotiated. And that's the story on page 50. Below that, on the black strip, it says Twitter assembles legal team to sue Musk over dropped $44 billion takeover. Story on page 5. These are some of the stories in today's This Day newspaper.
Okay, now let's talk about the lead story now, because there's a writer here that says, you know, Senator pulls out support, campaign groups, APC member quits. Do we see a fresh crisis brewing in the APC, you know, over Tinubu's pick?
Definitely there is going to be crisis, and I don't think it will be a storm in the teacup. When you talk about storm in the teacup, it means that look, it's something that will just be a flash, you know, something that will just go, because after the primary election, APC primary election, it was very clear that the governors, played a strategic role, you know, because they paved the way for the South to present, a candidate, to present the presidential candidate of the party. The governors came together and said, look, Buhari has spent 8 years from the North. Now it is the turn of the South. So the South has to present, give us a candidate. That is number one. Now, if you know the structure of primary elections in Nigeria, you know, most of the delegates, you know, we have been handpicked by the governors who will say, well, these are the people who are loyal to us. These are the persons who can do our bidding. You know, and at the primary election ground, I wasn't there, but my thinking is that, you know, all the delegates from the state had been told, vote for so and so candidate, you know, in this election. And I feel that many governors, gave their support to Tinubu. Now, the fact is that, you see, we expected Tinubu to have picked a governor, an outgoing governor as his running mate. because the governors represent a very solid bloc, power bloc in the APC, even in the PDP. The governors represent a very solid power bloc. So if what he has done, is seen as a snub by governors, I won't be surprised. It's like he snubbed the governors. And it's most likely that, they would not say, okay, if this is how he is going to repay us, then we may have to think differently. I know Shettima was also a governor, but not of this dispensation. He was a governor in the previous dispensation. Yeah. And so I understand the legal advisor to the party has resigned. And a lot of people will not be happy. So it's going to...
just a correction of information. The person touted to be legal advisor of the party is actually not. The legal advisor is someone from Katsina, Barrister Ahmed El Marzouk. And Daniel Boala, but of course a noted member of the party.
No, but it's not the legal advisor, because I didn't actually discuss. I was told that
it was
one member. So I'm thinking that it's going to lead to some crisis that will need to be managed, because like I tried to say earlier, the image of, the president being a Muslim, the vice president being a Muslim, the party chairman being a Muslim, the Senate president being a Muslim, the speaker of the House of Reps being a Muslim, does not really speak well. Only recently we had a new Chief Justice of Nigeria. I think he's a Christian. But previously it was parallel, which is not really good for inclusivity. Because Nigeria is very diverse. No matter how we look at it, no matter what you intend to do, for the country, you must recognize diversity and carry everyone along. But I don't accept what these days said, that Shettima is not competent. Shettima has competence, but my own argument is that he's not the only one who is competent to play that role as vice president.
Okay.
Okay, let's look at the story of the cost of 2023 election, which is also part of the major stories on the front page of this day, where they are quoting the economist Bismarck Rewani, saying that this will be Nigeria's costliest election. And he estimated that some 6 trillion will be spent on the election, arguing that money bags will take the day. What's your take on these statements?
Well, I think that statement follows what we see in our environment, The unfortunate thing about Nigeria is that when things are being speculated in the rumor mill, it tends to align with the reality. You hear rumors, but before you know it, it becomes part of our reality. The primary election, for instance, it was very expensive. Yeah. A very expensive primary election. And I think that even Rewani's estimation may be very modest. Yes, because the primary election consumed not less than 1 or 2 trillion, for each of the parties, the major ones, because if you hear the dollars that, was being shared, it's a whole lot of money. That is one. Then, you see, what we are living with in Nigeria, which is quite unfortunate, is the idea that, if you have money, you can buy anything, including the presidency of this country, which is very, very unfortunate. Because, we have discovered that even during the last Ekiti election, in spite of the presence of the EFCC, votes were sold. People traded their votes with 5,000 naira, 10,000 naira. And now we have, as of 2019, we had 80 million registered voters in Nigeria. And about 43 million Nigerians voted in the 2019 election. Now, if you do the rough arithmetic, if you give 5,000 naira to 43 million persons, I think it will be much more than the 6 trillion that Rewani is talking about. And unfortunately, at both local, state government elections, state elections, and federal elections, you see a whole lot of money, is shared. So I think that is not good for the country, because anybody who, distributes funds, to be voted into power would definitely want to recoup that money. There's nobody who goes into an election, spends money, and does not attempt to recoup that money. He may not recoup that money from his salaries, because what does the governor earn? What does the president earn as salary? He could recoup those money by leveraging some of the sources of corruption in the system, the loose ends and low-hanging ways of stealing money from the system in order to make up. So it's very unfortunate that our elections are money-driven. But I think that in 2023, Nigerians should look beyond what they can get from politicians, because the future of the country is at stake, number one. And you see, apart from the state of insecurity, which must be dealt with, we need somebody who can deal with this state of insecurity and, ensure that terrorists and bandits, leave our forests and stop what they are doing. Then they will have the serious economic crisis. We are not producing much. Look at, we had war in Ukraine, and that war is affecting us as a country. And it's because we are not producing what we could produce. Common bread, we are not producing wheat. We have the capacity to produce wheat. If you go to, those who have been to Ukraine, they say, look, they have, a mechanized agriculture, and they produce wheat using this system of farming. Technology. But in Nigeria, the CBN will give funds to some funny farmers, people in Abuja, politicians who claim to be farmers, who don't have the capacity to produce this wheat, and this fund will be missing. So we need a system that will enhance productivity in Nigeria, not only agricultural, even industrial production. When we had COVID-19, everybody, was shocked that we depended so much on China. And because China was not going back to this factory to produce and to ship goods to Nigeria, we're in trouble. So we need a president, we need a system that can revive the economy. I don't know whether it's the right word is the revive, but can boost the Nigerian economy and that can bring about social harmony, and can deal with insecurity in Nigeria. So collecting money, 5,000 naira, 10,000 naira, and selling this all-important position to those who are the highest bidders is very, very unfortunate.
All right, let's move on to more papers. We'll take the Leadership newspaper next. And we have a story at the top of the page here that says, unaccounted 10 billion naira. Senate issues arrest warrant on amnesty officials. Retired security personnel at 70. Matawale tells federal government. We also have just below the nameplates there, high operating cost. SMEs ask for tax holidays, regulatory forbearance as MSMEs financing gap hits $15.8 billion. We have another story that says Atiku returns this week amid concerns over Wike's defection. And the lead story here talks about 29 years after Abiola Kingibe. Tinubu resurrects Muslim ticket, picks Shatima as running mate. We have writers that say Masari resigns as VP placeholder. Why Asiwaju settled for former Borno governor pits Northwest as battleground for 2023 poll. We also have more stories. Oshun, don't stir up hate, Abdusalami tells politicians. Court asked to compel states to use governor's life pension for education. And then we're tackling reckless driving in the FCT, says minister. Now let's start with, Atiku returning this week amid concerns over Wike's defection. Now there are actually reports that, Wike and Atiku would be meeting because there's been a lot of crisis brewing, over him not being picked as vice presidential candidate. Do we see a change, in that title for Okowa?
Well, for those in the PDP, the choice of Okowa as the running mate to Atiku was a surprise. Maybe it's just the way Tinubu's choice of Shetima was a surprise to APC, party leaders. Because historically, since PDP lost the elections in 2015, most leaders of the party dumped the party. Historically, many of them abandoned the PDP to its fate. And it was a man like Wike, who rose to the challenge to say, look, this party must not die, And from insiders in the party, he funded even the payment of salaries to the staff of the PDP, from insiders. So you expect that one of the things to do for such a candidate, for such a person, was let me use the word loosely, compensate him. How do you compensate him if he doesn't get the party's ticket for the presidency? Then no matter what, there should be concessions. That look, you plead with him and say, please accept this vice presidential ticket. But what Atiku did was to say, look, I won't pick him, I'll pick Okowa. He has his reasons. He also have his reasons why he decided to pick Okowa. Okowa is qualified to become vice president. But if you look at what Wike has done for the PDP, perhaps he deserves something quite better. And I think it's good for Atiku himself to come down, to Nigeria to hold this all-important meeting. It is not only being vice president, that one can benefit from the party if it wins the election. There are other positions in the party. There are other things that he can benefit. And I'm feeling that if I were in Wike's shoes, it is not the time to jump ship. Because if you decide to migrate from PDP to APC at this moment, I don't think you'll be so trusted by the APC. Because the APC will say, look, this guy is an all-weather. He's just looking for whatever he can get. So I think there should be a measure of, patience, being able to give and take, be able to say, well, I lost it. That is not the end of this life. I still have a future, So I'm feeling that the PDP should put his house in order, in summary, because we need if it doesn't win, we need it to still play the role of a very vibrant opposition. Because, in many democracies, opposition parties are very, very important for the success of any democracy, because they must put the ruling party on its toes. So we are seeing another crisis in the PDP, but I wish it doesn't degenerate so much as to affect the fortunes of the party in the forthcoming elections.
Okay. Thank you very much. And now, look at, there is a proposal, according to the front page of leadership still, by the Zamfara State Governor Bello Matawale, advocating that security men be retired at 70 instead only of the current retirement age of 60. What do you think? Is this something that will help our situation?
So, personally, I have taken a position that is a bit different from what I would call the traditional position, as far as this security is concerned. And these are based on my own, what I've read, what others have done. I don't think a 70-year-old man should be the kind of person who should fight these bandits and terrorists. We need younger people who can be very daring. Because these terrorists use younger people, They pick children, maybe adolescent, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I'll be shocked that I think one of the leaders of bandits in Zamfara is less than 30 or about 30 or 31, but he's seen as one of the bandit leaders in Zamfara State. So most of them are not 70-year-old guys. Even Boko Haram, most of the leaders of Boko, even what do you call it? Before Shekau died, it wasn't up to even 50. I don't think it was 50. Shekau was in his 40s or maybe even early.
40s actually.
It was in his 40s, it wasn't up to 50. So when you are now talking about 70-year-old, to come and deal with this, that is not the right thing to do. What I have advocated from the outside is that, we need to recruit many, security personnel, and not just recruiting them. We need to ensure that in our rural areas, there is security consciousness, and we have a lot of security personnel, young men being trained to be able to challenge whatever the bandits are doing. We have read stories about what do you call them, hunters, pursuing kidnappers into the forest and really dealing with them. Most of these hunters are maybe older people. But if we have young men who are trained, to be courageous enough, to know the martial tactics, who will be able to, to go after bandits, go after terrorists who will learn the art and the strategy of these terrorists and confront them. I think it will be better than asking those who are 70-year-old to be allowed to go and fight a terrorist. Anyone who is 70-year-old could use this experience to train younger people. But if you talk about being swift, in battle, if you talk about being alert, if you talk about the kind of courage to move forward, to say, look, I am not afraid. The younger people may not have family members like wives and sons to bother so much about. They are courageous enough to go into the forest and face these bandits and terrorists. Even in Borno State, the civilian GTOs are made up of very young people who have made a lot of impact in dealing with the insecurity in Borno State. So I'm thinking that if you have 70-year-olds still being in the military, they should be like advisors, they should be like trainers or whatsoever. But then the kind of situation we are facing now, we need younger people, and in their large numbers, to be able to deal with the situation.
All right, so let's move on to our final paper, which is the Punch newspaper. We have stories that says FAC allocation drops to 2.1 trillion naira in 3 months. Terrorists demand 4.3 billion naira for Kaduna train hostages. We also have manufacturers threaten shutdown over soaring diesel prices. Court remands billionaire linked to carry drug deal. We also have the lead story that talks about, the same Tinubu, Shettima, how Tinubu shunned Northwest governors settled for Shettima. And right above that story, we have IOCs to remit 400 billion naira oil debt July, NNPC. NICOM vows fresh sanctions on air and insurance companies. We have fuel hits 250 naira per litre in Abuja, others queue spread. Now let's talk about this fuel and diesel issue. Now here we have a story that says IOCs to remit 400 billion naira oil debt in July, says NNPC. And the leader, is it this daily newspaper, puts it as IOC's killing oil service companies in Nigeria, says Wabote, and wants 40% cost reduction deal with NNPC as oil majors renegotiate. What does that mean for, the unavailability of fuel and the high price of diesel?
Okay, I think there are two separate issues because the IOCs, they are in the, what do you call it, the upstream sector. While when you talk about fuel scarcity, it's about the downstream sector. IOCs, reports by NIETI, has always said that, look, the remittances are not equivalent to what ought to have been remitted, and all this and all that. And they have this way of calculating what they ought to remit, based on what they pump, what they generate from underground, and all this and all that. So I'm thinking that the remittances will help in the sense that it will boost the money available to be shared by the three tiers of government. If the 400 billion is brought in, it will actually help a lot, because for several months now, we are told that the NNPC has used almost the larger share of whatever it earned from crude oil sale to fund the subsidy. And because of that, there's not enough money to be shared among the three tiers of government. So if this payment is made, it will show up funds available to be shared, by the three tiers of government, because the IOCs they are moving into offshore production because of what we call vandalization and fuel stealing. I don't know how to call it.
Bunkering.
Yes, oil bunkering. Because you hear stories that, look, when they produce onshore, the bunkerers, these criminals, they are able to tap into whatever they produce and excavate so much. Take so much from the crude oil to go and either sell on the high sea to pirates or to use for local refining or whatsoever. So the thing is they are sabotaging those who produce onshore. So now they've gone deep shore. And now if you go deep shore, the amount that you pay to the federal government depends on a lot of factors. There's a way they calculate it, particular percentage that you pay, because you invest so much to excavate fuel from the deep shore. So that is an issue. But when you talk about the scarcity, which is the downstream sector, it is about availability of petroleum products in Nigeria. And the case in Abuja is quite peculiar because of this bridging gap of a thing. You know, for instance, what they are saying, I mean, the marketers are saying is that, you see, if those who are in Lagos sell petroleum products, refined products as 165 naira per liter, then Abuja should not sell at 165 naira per liter unless government agrees to pay the cost of transporting these products from Lagos to Abuja. I don't know why it has become an issue now, because you know the bridging. I think there's an agency of agency of government that is given that responsibility. You have to calculate what marketers should earn for taking products from the south to the north of Nigeria. I think there is I don't know the agency now. It's just close by us here. I don't know.
NMPDR.
It's not NMP. This the Petroleum Equalization Fund.
Equalization Fund.
Yeah,
But they have all been repealed now into these two different agencies.
So the Equalization Fund was supposed to work on that, but now I think there is a dispute as to what should be paid and what should not be paid, and the president, you know, approved some billions of I think 74 billion naira recently to be paid to these marketers. You know, but you see, me, I'm not happy that we are dragged into the nitty-gritty of these things and we are suffering from it. Because going by the arrangement that has been made in the petroleum sector, Nigeria should not be importing refined products. You understand? That is number one. Because the NNPC has, is it 400, is it 1,000 or 400,000 barrels per day, you know, to refine for local use. So, I mean, we should ask ourselves, where is that 400 million? And why should we suffer? Because this is not available.
I think the first question is to ask where is the refinery, but maybe we cannot do that now because of time.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Dr. Theophilus Abba, for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, viewers, thank you very much for staying with us. We come to the end of the first segment of our Daybreak on Trust Television. We'll be back on top of the hour. Do stay with us.